Demolition Boy 64 here, and welcome to the first episode of Bad Smash Characters. In this series, I'll be taking a look at all the Smash games and analyzing characters that struggle to do well in the competitive scene. Today, I'm taking a look at Brawl Ganondorf, one of the most infamously bad characters in the series, and the worst incarnation of a character that doesn't have the best track record. In fact, some people have gone so far as to say that he's the worst character in the entire series. Is he? Well, let's take a look into Brawl's metagame and his moveset to see why he, well, sucks. To gather all the context for what exactly went wrong, we need to go back to Ganon's debut in Super Smash Bros. Melee. It might be hard to believe now, but early on in Melee's metagame, Ganon was looked at in a relatively positive light. This was mainly thanks to the existence of two of Melee's mechanics, those being L cancelling and wave dashing. L cancelling is a mechanic where if you press one of the shoulder buttons or Z shortly before landing while performing an aerial, the aerial's landing lag is cut in half. This mechanic was huge for Ganondorf, as his aerials had a lot of landing lag. Cutting that in half made throwing out his big meaty aerials much safer and gave him some combo potential, which made Ganon's damage racking potential that much better.
Look, he's already in the lead now!
Oh! He got it! No! No! Oh! No! He's doing it again! It's not gonna stop!
Oh my god!
Oh! Oh! My god!
No! No way!
Wave dashing, a mechanic performed by air dodging diagonally into the ground, was also beneficial for Ganondorf. Wave dashing would allow characters to mix up their movement and make it less predictable for their opponent. This aided Ganon's slow movement and helped to mix up what would otherwise be very predictable movement. In short, these two mechanics made Ganon less predictable and gave some of his moves more safety, allowing Ganon to better capitalize on his strengths while alleviating pitfalls Ganon has always suffered from, and problems heavy characters tend to face in general. Even despite these strengths, however, Ganon's viability would decline as players have gotten better at the game. However, even at his worst, Ganon still holds up significantly better in Melee than he would in its sequel. Due to the removal of the aforementioned mechanics, as well as new additions such as hit stun cancelling and tripping, Brawl had become a much more defensive game compared to its predecessor, which meant the best characters were those who had some of the best defensive games, such as Falco, Snake, and, of course, Meta Knight. Many characters could just camp Ganon out and force him to approach, which usually worked since Ganon was very slow, even more so than in Melee. Even when he does get in, the reward doesn't last long, as past low percents, hitting your opponent basically just resets neutral, which sucked for Ganon because his neutral is really bad. Being a big-bodied heavyweight fast faller, Ganon was also very susceptible to chain grabs, while losing his ult from Melee, which made his disadvantage state that much worse, especially since chain grabs were most prevalent in Brawl. Even with mechanics that should benefit him, such as momentum cancelling, there always seemed to be some kind of catch that made it not as good. I'll elaborate on that last point more once we go over his moveset. Speaking of which... Now that we've discussed some problems Ganon had as a result of Brawl's mechanics, let's get into the meat and potatoes and talk about his moveset. I'm not going to go over every little detail in his moveset and all the changes that occurred from Melee, you have the Smash Wiki for that, but rather I want to analyze general trends, patterns, and occurrences that can be seen in his moveset. Before I take a giant crap on Ganon, however, I want to talk about the few good moves that he does have and what he can do with them. I'll start with what I believe to be his best move, which is down air. Down air is a frame 16 spike, making it quite slow, and it has dummy thick landing lag. However, the move does 22% damage, and it can kill at very early percentages, even on stage. So far, that just seems like a big dumb laggy kill move, but that's not all it can do. The move auto cancels on short hop, meaning that as long as you can perform the move immediately after short hopping, you can effectively cancel the move's landing lag altogether. This makes it one of Ganon's only viable approach options and tech chasing tools, and one of his best damage racking tools. Its versatility even extends to being a combo starter at low percentages. As good a move as it is, it still has drawbacks. Its slow startup makes the move predictable and reactable. The high landing lag makes the move a bad landing option. And the move is attached to Ganon, which is probably the worst part. Regardless, being able to short hop auto-cancel dare is something that Ganon in future games would sorely miss, as it brought the move further utility than just a really good kill move. Ganon's up air is also very good. It has fast startup at frame 6, auto-cancels in the short hop, kills, and can semi-spike in the later parts of its animation. Back air also auto-cancels in the short hop and has quite big hitboxes. Its startup is okay at frame 10 and it has good kill power, although it is weaker compared to other games. To keep things a bit more grounded, I want to talk about his up smash. Its startup is frame 21, which is pretty slow, but it's quite powerful, particularly when sweet spotted. It also has a bit more horizontal range than it lets on. But the best part about this move is that it basically has no end lag, which makes this move pretty hard to punish and is one of the safer options in neutral. Although it can be a hard move to land due to its slow startup, it also beats Mach Tornado, which is pretty nice. The last move I want to talk about is his side B, Flame Choke. This is the game where Ganon's side B command grab would be introduced. It's slow like in future games and only does 9% if you land it. But your opponent couldn't tech it in this game, making combos and tech chases out of Flame Choke easier. I've talked about all the moves I wanted to bring up for this segment, but one last thing I want to bring up is a technique called the Flight of Ganon. There are two different ways to perform this technique, and it either are pulled off successfully, this happens. This is the closest Ganon ever gets to flying in the Smash series, but it's very situational. But hey, maybe once in a blue moon it'll help you approach an opponent or escape pressure. He has some other decent moves like dash attack or F smash, but I don't really find them to be worth bringing up. Ganon is considered by many to be the worst character in the game, and while I talked about how Brawl's mechanics would greatly harm his viability, Ganon has also suffered many direct character nerfs which made him even worse. One of the most severe nerfs Ganon received is his ground speed becoming significantly slower. And not only is this nerf baffling since his ground speed was slow to begin with, but he can't mix it up with wave dashing anymore. As a result, pretty much everything becomes much harder to do, which means approaching becomes more difficult, he gets camped out even harder, opponents have an easier time running away, he struggles more to string attacks together, etc. Some of his attacks also got slower, most notably his jab, which now comes out of frame 8 instead of frame 3. This makes jab a worse move for approaching, use out of shield, and a get off me tool. It also has more range and slightly more kill power, but the loss in its utility makes for a worse move overall. He actually got a buff in his airspeed, but this buff is partially offset by his air acceleration getting worse, making it harder for him to weave around in the air. So, if I haven't slammed it into your skulls enough, Ganon is slow. And while it's probably his biggest problem, it certainly isn't his only one. As you all probably know, Ganon is one big meaty boy, which means he has big meaty attacks. This is a strength that holds true for all games, even this one. Some of his attacks do have spectacular kill power. On the opposite side of the coin, however, Ganon has multiple attacks and sour spots that cannot kill Mario at over 200% in the middle of Final Destination. All things considered, Ganon doesn't have that many good kill moves since a lot of them either struggle to kill in general or have crappy sour spots that make the moves much weaker. They even gave his fucking up tilt a sour spot because, you know, that move really needed it.
Idiots!
Some of his moves would also get horribly nerfed, removing much of the usefulness they once had. Most notable would be his forward air, which has gained a much weaker sour spot as well as more landing lag, and you're going to be getting that landing lag since due to a coding mistake, fair takes 1,000 years to auto-cancel. His down throw had its angle altered, meaning you can no longer follow up with another grab / attack since that was his only useful throw. Ganon's grab game is non-existent, that is, if you can get the grab. Dark Dive is non-existent kill power, removing the already little use it had as an out-of-shield option. Wizard's Foot Grounded variant has no kill power, while the aerial version no longer gives Ganon's jump back, leading to Ganon having one of the worst recoveries in the game. Ganon has never really had a good recovery, but Melee's recovery could at least close a lot of distance, requiring the opponent to put some effort into edge guarding him. Edgeguarding Ganon is still as easy as making a sandwich, with the additional disadvantage of not going nearly as far. To pour the salt in the wound, recoveries in Brawl are on average better than they were in Melee, making the recovery stand out even further. Ganon's recovery would stay the same in future games, but since ledge hogging hasn't been removed yet, edgeguarding Ganon is even easier in this game, making the recovery the worst it's ever been. And it's terrible in other games. Lastly, because his recovery is so bad, Ganon is susceptible to dying earlier than many other characters despite being among the heaviest characters in the game. This also weakens hit stun cancelling for Ganon, which is otherwise beneficial as he can still die early from easy edge guards. Now, let's briefly recap over all his problems. 1. Ganon is slow. Shocking, I know. 2. Hard to approach, easily camped and walled out. 3. Neutral game is very bad. When he finally gets a hit past low percentages, he just resets neutral, trapping him in an endless state of limbo. 4. He's big-bodied and easy to combo. 5. He's a fast faller, does more harm than good as this makes his recovery worse and easier to combo and chain grab. 6. Disadvantage is awful, which further grants Ganon's bad neutral game and leads to some early deaths because 7. His recovery is among the worst in the game, weakening hit stun cancelling's benefit of living longer. 8. His auto shield game is terrible. 9. Many of his moves struggle to kill or are weaker relative to other games. 10. His moves also have terrible range or sour spots, making the moves weaker. 11. His grab and throws are completely useless. And lastly, number 12, something I forgot to mention in this video, but he does not have a projectile. All of these problems I mentioned add up to an abysmal character with an abysmal matchup chart. It's no wonder why tier lists haven't been kind to the King of Evil. That being said, is Brawl Ganon the worst character in the game or even the entire series?
No, there is another.
Most Brawl players are in agreement that Ivysaur is actually the worst character in the game, with some arguing that Zelda is a worse character in the game as well. However, both Ivysaur and Zelda have the option to switch to better characters, while Ganon is just stuck being Ganon, meaning that depending on how you look at it, Ganon could be the worst character in the game or even the entire series. While Ganon in Ultimate is still usually considered to be the worst character in the game, he is generally faster and his moves have better frame data as well as more power. Top tiers also aren't quite as oppressive for him. Despite there being room for improvement, character balancing in this series has truly come a long way. And with that concludes my first episode of Bad Smash Characters. Like and subscribe if you want to see more of these videos, and comment down below who you want to see next, and I may consider them. I'd love to hear about your feedback for these videos, positive or negative. Anyways, Demolition Boy 64, out.